Hey, welcome to Defender Live with Wave, with your host, Dave and Sam. And I wanted to kick this one off and go into some articles that we were looking at and thought it would be great to share out to everyone on the channel. So if you find this interesting, we'll kind of go through some of the stuff and see where it leads. But the first thing that we wanted to hit up, which is kind of interesting, is this article on marijuana legalization. So you want to hit that, Sam?
Yeah, it was an interesting article. It talks a little bit about the cannabis industry. And one time, obviously, this industry was illegal. And then, as time changes, it's become legal. It exploded. It went from $25 billion to they're saying, $200 billion by, 2028 or 2030.
Wow.
So I remember as an integrator when this happened, a lot of people laughed. They wanted nothing to do with it. If someone came to you, you had to get 100% of the production up front, because they're always concerned the government was going to come in and just shut them down. So it was always, people kind of walking on eggshells when they dealt with it, but, a lot of integrators, like I said, are slow to adapt. The ones though, that became subject matter experts, in the requirements, they did really well because of it. The industry now is regulated. There's certain things that are required, when it comes to security, specifically the video, the storage, and those that are, taking a serious look at it, they're doing really well, and those that just still, kind of want to take a step back and want to kind of ignore what's going on with it, or just want to be hands off, they're missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. What's interesting too is, I saw something talking about just employee safety. If you think about that, I mean, it's a major target, for thieves, obviously. And then in addition to that, they always had sort of, like you were saying, especially when it first started, it's very, very heavy on video surveillance and just watching every little thing that was going on and tracking, inventory and all that. But I think it's matured into, there's a lot of other technologies being deployed, from sensors and other devices on the growing areas. So what did you see as an integrator that was starting to roll out from some of the larger sites?
When it started out, the biggest thing was they wanted protection on the doors, for the dispensaries. And then they started having requirements for the video. You had to have so many weeks or so many months. You had to have it stored off site. They didn't want any excuses on, why a large portion of your footage disappeared and you have no record of what happened, in your premises. So, and I know on the, the farming and cultivating and that side of things, I know there's a lot more technology that's being rolled out every day on that. So it's really interesting to see just how it's exploded and how it's growing and, just where it's going to go. And, it's a full blown legit industry now.
Yeah, it's massive. And like you were saying, with additional states legalizing it, obviously that adds more people that are going to be getting into that market and growing. But yeah, there's a huge opportunity, I think, for the security market to really go in there and really fine tune solutions that are tailored for that market. Which is, we preach that all the time. It's like, each market is a little bit different. The needs are different. And there's an array of technology that's going to help them to really address their needs, because you basically have like a retail storefront where you want, how many people are going in and out. So there's sort of an analysis of the people there. And, they might want to know just foot traffic, what people are looking at. There's things on the side for the client. And then, there's going to be probably regulations that are mandating, certain requirements and days of storage and things like that. Yeah, but then the grow houses are completely, really separate kind of entity. And those needs are much different. And I did see there was some theft that was going on. I think it was in the Bay Area where people are going in and breaking into those grow houses and, doing some major theft and damage.
I spoke with a gentleman last week. He's got a few acres and he's out of state from where his facility is. but they do a lot of video verification, a ton of video verification for his facilities because they have very minimal staff there. And it's not a year round business for this guy. So he's always using video verification. He's got security patrols that come by, kind of check on doors and rattle locks and such. So there's a lot of kind of the old school aspect of it with newer technologies being mixed in.
Yeah, I would say perimeter protection for the grow areas. Obviously, that's going to be who's going in and out, and then drive areas and gates and things like that. So I would assume physical barrier fencing with some additional PIDs that are going to go around and be able to detect someone that's trying to climb over or get into the facility, break that barrier. And then maybe sort of an intercom if they want to buzz people in. There's got to be somebody that's in there that doesn't want just anybody going through the gate. So they're probably going to have to buzz them in and, like you said, sort of have a verification. So, that's all the stuff that we're kind of in. But it's funny how you address it a little bit differently with each one for sure. So, but the other thing that you popped up that was kind of interesting was this article. So this was on skiffs. You wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so this popped into my system again. I thought it was really interesting. Again, it's a blog, but it talks about skiffs and secure rooms. Normally when someone talks about a skiff, again, a skiff is a secure room within a facility where sensitive information can be viewed, discussed, or stored, where they keep it. But traditionally, you would think of governments and the military having these type of rooms, but any company that's doing business with the government, going to architectures, engineers, construction firms, they all have a need for it.
Yeah.
We're researching a little bit, the concept of a skiff. It came from World War II. They had, they call it a war room. And it was kind of devised as a room to be able to prevent spies from infiltrating the U.S. military plans and such. So it's obviously evolved a lot since then, but the idea and the purpose of it, remains the same. There's a lot of different criteria for it. You have the visual, acoustic, ductwork, electrical. Those are all aspects that go into it. But most importantly for us is the intrusion detection system aspect, and that's preventing access to the skiff. There's a UL 2050. It's the approved components to be installed by certified contractors and integrators, and not everybody does it. And everybody that does it, not all of them do it well. So my point is, back when the government had needs for skiffs, there were only a few integrators that actually went after the type of business, just because of requirements and how much work was actually involved. But now that there's architects, engineers, contractors that are doing this, there's a lot more opportunity for it. And those that are late to the party are not only missing out on that work, but these end users are actually taking their business and they're going to the larger integrators or the integrators that do it well. So I think there's really a need to adapt, for integrators to continue to evolve and just adapt what they're doing to the changing times. And this isn't a new thing. Skiffs have been around for a very long time. So it's just the idea that, you gotta stay, not just stay on track with the new technology, but you got to stay on track with what your old customers are transitioning over to. So I just thought that was pretty interesting reading this post here.
Yeah, I know we were talking recently about like an intercom component within a skiff, and there's some challenges with doing those type of applications sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And then all of it basically, from what I remember, is it all has to be locked within in that facility, so nothing going out.
Right. And so it's all self-contained.
Yeah, and so you get in the electronic component. A lot of the technology is pushing the opposite direction, wanting to go cloud and get into much wider areas in terms of the data going out into a wider area than ever before. Usually it was in the main facility, and now it's multiple facilities. So there's data that goes through that. So SCIF is literally the opposite, where everything is isolated and self-contained. In terms of video surveillance, things like that, obviously you're still going to have a need for pure VMS on site storage, cameras on site, everything on site. So there's that need is not going to go away as long as there's military requirements like that.
Yeah, by the time you get to a skiff, you've already passed through multiple layers of protection and security. This is sort of the last line of defense to protect the information that's being stored and talked about inside of there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another thing that was sort of interesting to me, they sort of did a rebrand on this, but it's Crime Tracer, Crime Map, and it's sort of a way for the public to report, certain crimes and stuff that's going on. I thought that was pretty cool to be able to see something like this that normally, I mean, we sort of had access to things like that as an integrator where you could see where the crime maps were.
Sure.
But, now this is more kind of mainstream for the general public, which I think is pretty interesting, just to be able to go through and see where things are really at. So I thought that was pretty cool that they're sharing data like that.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's not just showing you, where things are happening. It's showing you what's happening. And then you can even dive in further to this and see, what time it's happening. My dad always told me, nothing good happens after dark, and scrolling through this, you can see, a lot of that was true. I was little, we had to be home by the time the streetlights went on. If streetlights went on, we weren't inside the house, there was a problem. And you start scrolling through here, you start taking a look at, what's going on in some of the residential neighborhoods, some of the commercial complexes, once those lights go on. It's be nice being able to make the informed decisions about how you're going to plan your day, plan your week, and, what you're going to let your loved ones do around certain times. So I love things like this.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little heat map of incidents and where things are at and when they happen, what time of year they happen. It goes pretty granular.
Yeah.
But, that's a great way of knowing in terms of, real estate and where you might want to live too. So I thought that'd be kind of a cool thing to share just for if people weren't unaware that things like this actually existed. I thought it was a great resource. And it's also a great way of sort of kind of crowdsourcing security where now people can sort of share what's going on and what's happening in real time. And there's, some proprietary stuff that's out there that does that, but this is kind of more mainstream and geared toward the security industry. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
The next thing I saw that was kind of interesting, kind of an interesting thing because it's such a hot topic right now, but you have ChatGPT and Bard and these other things that are out there. And now you have, all these people using it. And I guess now they're tracking this, and there's this company, Darktrace, that's actually blocking it because they're basically sharing kind of trade secrets and things that they shouldn't be sharing. So especially some of the tech companies are looking at this stuff, and people are, volunteering information that's going into these channels and ChatGPT and Bard and other ones, and putting that in there. So now you have this sort of counter component, right? So Darktrace is going in, and this is a service for businesses looking to sort of mitigate, information like that getting out. So these basically they're blocking these sites.
Yeah, and I'm all for AI. I always want to be very cautious of stuff like that. But so long as my family, my loved ones, we can operate freely without too many restrictions. I love having the AI out there being able to assist us with our daily lives. But when it comes to certain things like this, there's all types of negative aspects of it as well. When you look, you can search for something on GPT, and it'll tell you, I can't give you that information. So there's ways you can ask the questions, and it'll give you the information, based on the way you word it.
Yeah.
So true. There's definitely a benefit to what they're doing here.
It's pretty interesting. I just, it's fun to sort of look at how it's rolling out, and we're so early into this, really, where it's sort of the Wild West, where this stuff is going in, and now they're saying, now companies are sort of having, whoa, hey, we have to make sure you're not just pushing out any and all information out there from the company. We have to have some sort of controls on this. So But I think the benefit on the counter side is massive, where there's a lot of stuff that it can help with. Being in sales, from perhaps people writing better emails and messaging that goes out, makes it faster for them to do that. I've seen quite a few people getting into that lane right now, and sort of sharing all these things while it's trending. But in addition to that, you have major companies like Salesforce that are really doubling down on the AI component as well. And I think most people kind of thought, hey, if this stuff was to help me out, it could make me much faster and better, and realize who I should be talking to. So there's definitely huge potential there. And then there's always this sort of flip side, like then you read these articles where it's the end of all these jobs or whatever, but there's going to be new ones created at the same time. So it's sort of one of those things where we're in this right now. These are things that we've been anticipating for nearly 100 years, but especially probably since the 50s they've been talking about things like this. And then here we are. We're literally living in this time where this technology is going in, and it's growing and advancing so much faster than anyone really anticipated, that it's sort of like almost a new. It reminds me of when the internet first really started taking off,
right?
And people didn't know what to do exactly, but they wanted to get in on it. And so you had sort of this .com where people had businesses and things just because they were just in it. They were sort of invested in. And I see a lot of investment going into AI. And I think, if history is any sort of guide of what's going to happen in the future, this could be a giant bubble that sort of naturally just sort of grows up. And then all the best technologies will sort of weather that storm. And then the ones that really didn't have a reason for being, other than they just had AI in their business plan, will kind of go the wayside. But
every time someone's concerned about it's going to replace an industry or an industry falls, something rises to take its place. So for anything that this is going to replace, there's going to be something to come out of it, where there's going to be additional industry, additional jobs. So it's really not. I don't think as big a deal as some people place on it. When they say, "Oh, this it's going to replace," it's going to. I love it. I use there's a version of it that I'll use. And I was writing an email the other day, and I was, you can't think of that word, it's on the tip of your tongue. It's like, so you type it the way you have it, and you just say, what's another perspective on this? Or, can you rewrite this? That's going to assist me with X, Y, and Z. And it gives you a couple options, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's if anything that can save you some keystrokes and get things done faster, I think is fine. And, looking at industry wise, if I was going to compare when stores started going on, especially Amazon is a great example. I think I bought my first book from Amazon in '98, and then it just completely changed in terms of how it grew and everything. And you look at some of the stores that it sort of replaced, and I think Sears would be a good example of a store that had been around for 100 years, but here comes .com, and they just didn't get on that in a way that was going to be effective. And they had such an advantage over a new company like Amazon trying to get there. And you look at the difference, so there's always winners and losers on stuff like that. But look at how many people Amazon hires and employs, maybe much more than Sears ever did. So like you're saying, there's going to be winners and losers, and there's going to be things that go down, but there's going to be sort of the growth on the other side of that. So anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting in terms of how this stuff continues to shake out. Now, this one, I want sort of your 2 cents on this, because I know you were into access control a lot. So check this out. Did you read through this one?
I did, and it was talking about side channels. And so I don't know, and I don't really understand a whole lot of about the side channels and exploitation when it comes to this.
It has to do with light. So the LED emits certain light frequencies, and so this thing's able to, by tapping into those frequencies. And I guess they've known about this for a long, long, long time. And there's a certain word that I wanted to highlight on it, but it's yeah. So the side channel component they've known about for forever. I mean, when sort of things like this first started coming out. And anyway, what I thought was interesting about it, more than the actual exploit itself, was the fact that they're using, here it is a great, so it's the rocking and rolling shutter is how they're doing it to decode the card. So what was interesting to me, Sam, is the fact that they're using a video surveillance camera that they could tap into. And what that kind of reminded me of is how many cameras are on the market that have been hacked and exploited. And now you have where not only can if that camera was taken over or exploited and somebody didn't notice, and if it's aimed at a door, it's literally decoding their card so that they could come in and go through, maybe it's a data center or something. So it just shows you how all this stuff is really tied together, and that layered security is such a critical thing, where you have to have every aspect of that really locked down and understand, where those exploits are. But
yeah, this is one of those things where you hope our guys that are taking a look at this and trying to come up with an alternative way to stop the bad actors using it. You hope our guys are smarter than their guys, because it's really scary when you have multiple layers of protection, and one of those layers is now being used against you.
Yeah, and well, I think understanding, I think a lot of end users who are purchasing equipment don't realize that there are a lot of OEMs. So these are sort of white labeled cameras that are out there, and that's not the actual manufacturer of the product. And
Right.
So why that's important? Well, the more control you have over firmware and all these other things, if you're manufacturing that, then you have more control over issues like this. And when you're not, that can be a big deal. So I think it's just important to realize that, when you're purchasing from the actual manufacturer who's creating a product, that they will have sort of those firmware updates and things like that if there were exploits to it. But they shouldn't have that. And that also goes into when I was selling a lot of video surveillance, because IP came out, it was very brand new 10 years ago, and a lot of people were sort of dragging and didn't want to leave analog, because really mainly of the cabling. But when they started going with IP, one of the things that was pretty interesting is a lot of times they'd lean on the customer for just creating a VLAN off their network. And what's interesting is if they were just creating, just pretend that thing is a cat, instead of just a Cat 6 cable, coax. Because if you had a physically separate network end to end, and it's just only thing on there are the cameras, and then you're connecting at the server level into the customer network, you've mitigated a bunch of areas where, those cameras could be hacked, right? Because now at least you're having to go through the server, you're having to go through username and passwords to get just into the network itself of where the cameras are. So I think, anyway, I think a lot of people will push back on creating a separate network, but it is true though, like you have a separate network, a dedicated network for just security cameras, and then you don't have as many of these issues where they're just isolated, right? And you'd have to go through the server to get to them. So kind of an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
But of course, we're getting into cloud, and then that's completely different. So, all right. So another thing that I wanted to touch on, because there's been another issue, and I know we're getting ready to actually release a video on, like basically a series of videos touching on critical infrastructure, and we're really focused on electrical substations because I feel like it's such a life and death issue. And so I want to share this where, this is published in 2014. And this was because, this basically goes over NERC and the PG&E Metcalf substation that was attacked back in 2013. And that really spurred on these sort of new requirements that were out there. And you and I are literally working on some stuff for NERC, SIP, and some of the requirements around that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think this is probably where things are getting, kind of dicey, because there have been so many additional attacks that have been going on that I think the electric companies really need to look at physical barriers, because, of course they're showing this fencing, right? And I'd say it'd take you less than a minute to cut through that. So yeah, you have a wire on here that could tell that somebody hit a certain zone. But if I could cut through that and then be on the other side of it, they're going to wind up doing whatever damage they want to do. And then they're going to hightail it out of there before anybody can get to them.
Yeah, the traditional chain link fence. I mean, you can put sensors on it. You can put fiber on it. There's a lot of things you can do to it, but it's not going to slow them down. I mean,
No.
it's nice that it's going to alert somebody, but by the time they get out there, if you're using the traditional chain link fence, in most instances, they're going to be able to get to a certain area within the the substation or power station or wherever it is. And a lot of them are unmanned. A lot of them, they don't have the personnel out there.
Right.
And by the time somebody gets out there, you could have done a lot of damage.
Which, speaking of which, they actually captured this guy. Check this article out. This happened June 13th. Well, it was published June 13th. And this is out in Idaho and Washington County. And some guy was charged with fleeing law enforcement, and he was shooting into one of the units out there, and then supposedly had some sort of destructive device that was on him as well. Anyway, I just thought, man, of course, this is like a dam, so this is a big deal up in sort of the areas where they have water, and that's the electricity out from those areas. But anyway, I thought it was really a big deal. So shooting into a power substation, it just shows you that, being vigilant on this and talking about it a lot, it's just because it is happening a lot. There is issues that happened back east last year. I'd say if we did a Google search, we could probably find 3 or 4 in recent months that have happened, and I think, looking at a layered security approach to the grid and critical infrastructure in general is just a really, really big thing right now. And I think we really need to be vigilant on. There's just a lot of crazy people out there, man.
It's so important. As important as everybody realizes or thinks it is, it's even more important than they're probably thinking. Because once you take out a dam, I mean, that's wild.
That's next level.
I mean, once you take out one of these critical infrastructure sites, it's not just that people lose power. It's the power is for aside from your day to day life. You have the hospitals. There's all types of stuff that rely on this every day, and they only have so much backup power.
That's a good point.
If too much damage is done, then they're going to, they have to go past their allotted, whatever they have for backup power, their generators, they have, you're going to have to start moving people from one hospital to another hospital. You're not going to be able to, emergency services are going to be dealing with those issues instead of dealing with, other issues that are out there on the road now. And there's all types of problems, that have a cascading effect if we're not going to treat these critical infrastructures the way they need to be treated, and a single fence around a property, or a single layer of protection around a property is not going to cut it. If you don't have the multiple layers, the chain link fence, it's any type of fencing, over time it's not going to stop them. They're going to get through. But the whole purpose is you need to slow them down So your other alerting devices have been able to notify, police or law enforcement, or whoever it is that's going to be responding. Give them the time to get there to stop somebody before they cause a problem. I just think it's such an important thing because I have family and loved ones all across the country, and it's any one of these could affect us dramatically.
Oh yeah,
I'd hate to see it happen to us, and I know I'd hate to see it happen to any loved ones out there.
absolutely. And I think that when you look at how long it took, just on that one that happened back in 2013, it took almost a month for them to get that site operational again.
Yeah,
And some sites, if done, there were, NERC was saying that it could take up to a year. So I think, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that, I know that NERC and FERC, so is it the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, was out there at the Capitol and, kind of going through the
oh,
grid and
just recently, yeah.
yeah. And so I thought, maybe they'll be talking about security, but I don't think they did. I think they were just talking about, how well it was doing in terms of reliability and things like that. But, I think this is a bigger issue than is it's given in terms of, amount of time and energy that's put behind it. And I think that, there should be some federal money that's pushed toward this, because again, it's critical infrastructure, like you're saying. I mean, that's the ripple effects on that are a big deal. And I think that with as many, issues around the world that are happening, and you're going to have enemies that are looking at things like that, I really hope that, if we can have a little bit of an impact in terms of stopping people like this by offering. And this is why we really like technology, right? So we're looking at that layered security approach. We're like, okay, what would somebody need to really protect this site? Well, you're going to need sensors that can have a much larger sort of bubble around that. So you're getting an alert, and you're looking at a lot of different threats now. And then in addition to that, at the end of the day, you're going to need a physical barrier, like you're saying, that's going to slow them down. So that way the authorities get there and they're going to lock the guy up because he couldn't get through the barrier like he could with, something that's weak. And so, I think that's where things need to start heading. That, and of course, video surveillance, cameras, and other technologies to help kind of maintain these sites. But it's a big job, and that's why I love working with our system integrators, because they're on this, and there are people that are really dedicated to just the critical infrastructure sites. And so we're trying to put all the best components and tools at their disposal. And I think, again, that layered security approach is really a big deal. So at least that's what keeps us kind of going, looking at what else could we do? What other technology is there that's going to help and address some of these threats. The next thing that I wanted to share, which I thought was kind of cool. So no more of the Oakland A's. So the A's, $380 million bill to fund a new A's stadium in Las Vegas. So I know some system integrators are going to be on that. So that'll be pretty interesting. And I thought, with we know some technology that's pretty amazing in terms of cameras and the amount of pixels that they can get on some of these stands. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. So that's going to be approved.
Pretty interesting. They finally got it approved, and I think they already had the land, I think, picked out.
Yeah,
So it'll be interesting to see, as they design it and develop it, what they look for and what they're allotting for when it comes to security and protection. Because you look at a lot of the stadiums around the country, around the world, and it's not just inside the stadium where they need the protection.
right.
There's a lot that happens out in the parking lot and the surrounding area. So, and especially Vegas, you have a lot of people coming in from outside the area, and they're not always the have the best character when it
Right.
comes to go into some of these ballparks and some of the things that they're trying to start. So it'll be interesting to see what they do to try to counteract some of those guys.
Yeah, this is going to be so what do you think's going on right now with obviously this goes in and there's going to be plans drawn up and everything. How long until the security side of the fence starts looking at design and what they're going to be putting in?
I think initially with the initial design, they're probably going to immediately start looking at video for the interior of the stadium. But it doesn't matter how much planning anyone does. The parking lots and the outlying areas, it always get neglected and or
Mm.
forgotten about until something happens. So I would be really surprised if they take advantage of the time that they have right now to do some of that. I think it's kind of going to be on the integrators that are bidding this job. Because I would I would be very surprised if they had the forethought to do something in the far areas of their parking lots and in outbuildings and such. Just because it's not, they only have a certain amount of money, and although it seems like a lot of money when you're building a stadium and you're trying
Yeah.
to get everything covered, those are the areas that are going to get left out because it's not a priority until it is, and it's
Well, before they pave that parking lot, do all the trenching and put put hardwired, I would say fiber, out to some of those areas where if you want really high megapixel cameras, but at least
just put the runs so you can run the cables later. I mean,
yeah,
it might cost them a little bit of money, but boys are going to save them in the long run.
yeah, big time. Because they're not going to want to tear that up once they pave that. But that's always a big issue is sort of these after the fact, like, oh yeah. So that would be
Yeah,
great.
I mean, we see it every couple of weeks. I mean, we're seeing some significant structure, where they want to put cameras in and they just paved last week. They don't
Yeah,
want to tear up the ground. They don't want to do whatever it is, and it's you have choices, but it's they're more expensive now.
right. Yeah, it's a lot easier to do it up front. So with these new builds going in, no matter what it is, whether it's a building going up or if it's a stadium like this,
Yeah,
thinking about all of these security components before everything's done is great. Just like a house, like if you wanted Cat 6 throughout your house and you want to wire that up, it's a lot easier to do it when it's 2x4s.
before you put
Then
the drywall up. That's
yeah,
right.
put the drywall up, and then it's a lot more fun, right? It's gonna be a lot more expensive. So yeah, things like that. It's a big deal if people are putting these plans together right now to get in there early and take a look at stuff like that. No matter what technology they wind up going with, it makes sense to invest early in getting that stuff figured out and where you're going to place things. And that's the thing about cameras is it's all about placement. Like what kind of pixels are you looking at? What level of identity do you want? And things are trending where they do want to be able to identify people. They do want to be able
Oh
to
yeah,
have enough pixels to actually have certain types of analytics and things like that to actually be effective. The most wanted man in the world is Pixel Man, right? Where you can't tell who the heck it was, and so I think if if they want to design things again, no matter what it is, if it's a parking lot for a building or a parking lot for a stadium, or anywhere, they just really need to think about camera placement ahead of the build and make sure that way they have the elevation with a pole and things are sort of all there. Conduit runs are all there, and it's nice and tight and easy, and it makes the job a lot easier for the system integrator too.
well, and you think about what they were putting in 20 years ago or 50 years ago. Anyone that that has the forethought to run a couple extra sticks of conduit now, because you don't know what you're building a brand new stadium. You know what you're going to try to run in 20 years.
Yeah.
You have these extra runs. It's going to be it's going to be the cost now, but versus the savings later, it's going to be pretty substantial.
Anyway, so I think that sort of gives us a good area in terms of what we wanted to sort of hit on. These are just things throughout the week that caught our attention. And again, with another crazy person out there, trying to hit the electric grid. Security folks, stay vigilant. Keep your head on a swivel and looking at what's going on around these facilities, because it seems like there's enough crazy people to keep us busy for a long time. But making these harder targets, I think that's what drives you and I. No matter where it is, that's what we want to help out with. So if people ever just want to sort of chat about what our thoughts on these things are and what we would recommend, there's a lot of different manufacturers out there that we're just really big fans of it. We look at technology and we make recommendations based on what we think is the best fit. And so if you want to chat with us at any time, where can they reach you, Sam?
Send me an email, samuel.hicks@wavereps.com, or you can just find me at LinkedIn.
There you go.
Send me a DM and we'll get together.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be on the channel. And in fact, this will be going up on the channel right now. So if anyone has any other follow-ups, give us a call.
Yeah, you have any interesting stories or anything you want us to dive into? Drop a comment. Let us know.
Yeah, I'd love that. We want to make this helpful, again, to anyone that wants to bother listening to this. So, but yeah, these are just things that were sort of on our list of things that we wanted to chat about because we thought they were pretty interesting. So pretty big gamut, man. We went from marijuana to critical infrastructure and
sports stadiums.
So that's pretty good. But until next time, thanks everyone for taking time to watch this, and we'll chat with you later. Take care.